Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, welcome. How you doing? We are in October now. It is fall. Is it getting cool where you're living? And have you taken out your jackets and making soups? And I don't know. Unless you're on the other side of the world where it's summer, in which case, how's the summer going? I want to talk today about attachment injuries and how they can show up in relationships. And I want to be really clear that I'm just going to bring up a number of scenarios of things that I'm either going through or have gone through. I don't have super clear answers for you. This is not going to be a linear discussion about if you have this, then do this, and this is how you work through it, because I just don't think that it is that clear. I think that when we have attachment injuries, they can show up in so many different ways. And depending on where we're at in our own healing process, how much of our own work we've done, it's going to look different. But what my intention is to name how this can come up and what it looks like, and some of the ways that we can learn to sit with it, navigate through it, and just be present to the process. Because I think that what happens is we have these young parts of us that get really wounded and injured. And if we don't learn to listen to those younger wounded parts, they show up in our adult relationships and they run havoc. And those are the parts of us that say, you're not the boss of me, you can't make me, you didn't reach out to me, I'm not going to reach out to you, I don't trust you, I don't like you, you're not here for me, I don't want to be friends. And these parts really need time and attention, and they really need to be heard and seen. Now, if you are someone who's in my life and this story sounds familiar, again, this is really about my attachment injuries, that I am not dogging anybody. What I know is the people that are in my life are amazing, and I am very blessed. And most of the people that are in my life, we can talk about these attachment injuries and how they show up. And so I want to be very clear that nobody is doing anything wrong. And in fact, I was talking with a friend. I have a friend that we polo with almost every day. And I was sharing about how some of these attachment injuries were coming up in some other relationships. And her response was, let me know, and I want to be here for you. And as much as I would love to say, then polo me every day so my attachment injuries don't get activated, what I said was, I really appreciate that. And these are areas that I need to heal. And as much as I want people to be there for me, I want them to be there for me, the honest truth is I don't want people showing up for me just because they're concerned that something's going to get activated for me. I don't take hostages. And I really want the people in my relationships to show up when they want to show up in a way that they feel ready to show up, not because they know that it's going to activate something for me. And I talked to her about this and said, I want you to do what works for you. And if it brings up something for me, then it means that I have healing to do. And I stand by this. And this is stuff that we still need to talk about. So first of all, I'm going to talk about a relationship that's not mine. But I was talking with a friend yesterday. I'm going to make it vague so that, people can't get hurt by this. I'm thinking, do I really want to do this? Yeah, I think I will. So this friend has a longtime friend, over 30 years, and something happened to this person's family member. And my friend was there for this family incredibly, incredibly, incredibly during this really rough time. And my friend is one of the kindest, most generous people that I know. And then my friend was supposed to show up at this person's new house. And my friend just forgets details sometimes. Like it's like she knows it, we know it, and she forgot. And the friend texted her and said, I guess we're not getting together. And because my friend felt really guilty and responsible, she felt, I'm so sorry. I know I'm a terrible friend. My hope is that you'll be able to forgive me, blah, blah, blah. And then she didn't hear back from this person for a month. And we were talking about it. And I said to my friend, you are such a remarkable friend. And yeah, it was a blip, but your friend, I know I'm saying friend. Hopefully you're tracking which friend we're talking about. But the friend had a really wounded part. And what I'm guessing is that wounded part came up and said, nobody's ever here for me. I count on you. You're not here for me. I can't trust you. I don't know if this is true or not. But the reality is my friend was present and available for this person for an extended amount of time during a very hard period. And that relationship is solid. And sometimes little blips happen. And instead of her friend being able to go, I was really hurt and disappointed because you forgot and didn't show up for me. And that activates this belief that people aren't here for me and I can't depend on people. I'm having this response, but I know that you have been here for me. I know you are a good friend. I know I can count on you. These are the ways that our attachment injuries show up. And if we don't have any awareness, what it activated in my friend is the sense of she's not a good friend and she's not doing enough. And she is amazing. And so how do we learn how to rumble with this stuff when it goes on? So let me talk about a couple of personal relationships and just show you kind of how I've dealt with it or what I'm dealing with. Because this stuff comes up for me all the time. And I hear so much from people that are sensitive, creative, deep thinkers. We often have so many attachment injuries and they really run havoc in our current relationships, especially if we haven't learned how to regulate our emotions, that we end up feeling incredibly hurt and angry and disappointed and we don't know what's going on. And if we haven't done healing, it feels like people are doing things to us and figuring out how to navigate that. Okay, so the first situation is I have a friend and we had a regular date, and especially during COVID, this just saved me. So we had a day and a time that we would get together every week. And because I have this part of me that feels like I'm really going to overwhelm people. So you see a part of me that's very vulnerable, very open, very authentic, and that is real. There is a little part of me that feels so wounded and hurt and feels like she is too much and doesn't want to have to ask in the moment to get her needs met because it just activates an incredible amount of hurt. And my hope is I'll circle back to this because this is kind of why I decided to sit down and record this episode after having some tears with somebody over, talking about this really wounded part of me. When I have a scheduled appointment with someone, what that feels like, I'm not saying this is the truth, is somebody loves me and cares about me enough to schedule time with me. Now, this is not true, but this is what my belief system is. And that's very comforting for me. And I feel like I have one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake all the time, meaning, rushing forward to, I want to be connected. I want to have friends. I want to have that sense of connection and community. And this other part that puts the brakes on, that it's like, oh, I don't know if that's what I want. I have so much ambivalence. And when I have a regular plan with somebody, I often do not feel like getting together. I'm having ambivalence. I'm feeling meh. But because I have this commitment and this sense of responsibility, I just suit up and show up. And I know that if I bring the body, the mind comes, and I almost always end up having a great time. So this is another reason for me why commitments really work. That external structure is very helpful. And it means I don't have to deal with having spontaneous needs because my needs can all be scheduled in. Nothing wrong with it, just naming it. So for probably a year and a half, we had a regular weekly date. And then when I started getting into paddling and doing some Zentangle, it interfered with the dates that we had together. And I had finally said, can we come up with another day and time? And this friend all along had been saying, I really want to do things with you. Let's go out to lunch, let's go shopping, let's go for a walk. Where when we would get together, we would just sit and talk, which I find incredibly satisfying. And I'm not really good about in the moment. I can be home and I can be bored, and it does not occur to me to reach out to somebody. That's just what goes on for me. And I suspect that there's a part of me that is so wounded really feels afraid to acknowledge a need when I'm really having that need to connect. And if I reach out and somebody can't meet it, that it's going to activate an intolerable amount of disappointment. I don't know that that's actually the truth, but I think that that's what I operate under. And so we talked about, I'm happy to try it, but I don't think that that's going to work for me because I just don't even think about it. And she assumes that I'm busy and often doesn't reach out to me. So when we had this conversation a few weeks ago, I did not share this with her because I knew this was about my attachment injuries, but it definitely brought up this feeling of, if you loved me, you would schedule regular time with me, and I'm not that important to you. And you have these other regular times with other people in your life. And how come you don't have it with me? This is my wounding. This is not about the other person. And I really felt like I don't make plans. This isn't going to work. I felt really hurt. I felt really injured. And I was willing to suspend that stuff, honor it, but just see how it would work out. And the reality is we've had a couple times when we've gotten together and it's been very satisfying. And yesterday we spent a few hours together. We got together and visited. We did a little shopping. I went back to her house. I had some lunch. It was lovely. And I felt really connected. It's a new way of showing up in the relationship. And I know that I need to trust. Years ago, I had a therapist because I used to have a Saturday morning breakfast date with a friend. And for years we did this. And the therapist said, you like to schedule your needs. And I didn't like her saying that, but I think that there's something very true about that. And it does work for me to have things scheduled in. So that's one of the ways that I work through it. And I didn't really want to process through what that brought up with me with this friend because it really had nothing to do with her. And I found other places to process it. So that's one instance. Another instance is I have a friend and we poloed almost every day throughout COVID. It was just really satisfying. And especially since I don't go into an office, I miss those intimate conversations that you have with people when you see them every day. If you talk to somebody, once a week or once a month or every couple of months, the little details you don't tend to share, you kind of give big snapshots of the things that are going on. And so I really love that intimacy of when we talk frequently, we talk about the ins and outs. And the more we talked and started to talk about our attachment injuries, she really didn't want to show up every day, but because of her wounding and her need to people please, this is what she felt like she needed to do. And again, I don't want to take any hostages. I just don't. And because we were able to talk about our attachment injuries and how things show up for us in the relationship, we figured, let's see how it works. So she started to polo less frequently. The first thing that happened was I found myself feeling really angry. And the story that I told myself, and this is from my wounded part, is, she doesn't care. Nobody's here for me. I show up for everybody. Nobody shows up for me. Just this very hurt, indignant young part. And I was walking the dog one morning and I decided to do some EFT, some tapping on it, which I find very powerful. It really allows those negative emotions to just come up and be expressed. And then naturally something just kind of shifts. And so as I was doing this tapping on this while I was walking the dog, I'm sure I looked very interesting to people. I really was able to see that, my friends are here for me. They love me. They care for me. If they're able to show up for me, they totally will. And when they can't, it's a matter of pacing, of timing, of what works for them, and that it's okay and that there's nothing wrong with me. I think the underlying belief is that I'm too needy, I'm too much, I need too much, and people can't handle me. They can't handle my needs. My needs are fine. Not everybody has the same need for the level of connection that I have, and that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with me. And by the time I was done with tapping, I really got clear that it's a gift to be around me and my vulnerability. It's not for everybody, and not everybody has the same need for intensity. And I felt more relieved. So I walked through that part of it. Then I waited a couple days and my friend pulled me back. And I really had this. So my wounded part was like, screw you. I'm not going to listen to your polo and I'm not going to respond now because it's going to be another 3 days until you respond. And that makes me feel really wounded. One of my big attachment injuries is when people don't respond to me, I feel incredibly powerless. And this is from my childhood when my dad left. And when people don't respond, it can activate that really feeling powerless. And then I go into feeling really angry. And I recognize it now, so I don't feel like I act on it the way that somebody else might. But it's still there. That pull is still there. Those strong feelings are still there. Part of me was feeling hurt and angry that it's like, fine, you waited 3 days. I'm not going to make this a priority. And there's another part of me that is a little more healed that is talking about pacing, which is, if the pace is we're going to polo every couple days, then I'm going to refocus and redirect on some other things. And when I feel ready, I'm going to polo back. And so this morning I poloed her back after a couple of days. And if you've listened to the earlier episode about when I went out in the kayak and I was upside down in the water, when it happened, I was so excited and I wanted to tell her. And this part of me that was feeling hurt and wounded did not reach out to tell her because I'm playing the tit for tat. I haven't heard from you, so I'm not going to tell you what's going on with me. Now, I can tell you that I have a relationship with somebody else who I don't hear from that frequently. But for some reason, my attachment injury does not get activated in this relationship. And she shows up when she can. I know she's there for me. And I sent her a text the day that I flipped upside down in my kayak to share with her, and she responded, and I felt really connected. The reason why I'm sharing this with you is because these wounded parts have ways of making our perspective just, they just really mess with us. And had I not been feeling wounded, I probably would have reached out to this friend that I'm talking about and said, hey, this exciting thing happened. And I'm just not there yet. I'm practicing with this pacing and trusting and what it's getting activated for me. And I just have to be really okay with that. And right now, I'm not going to be processing what's going on for me. If she asks, I'm happy to tell her. But I feel like I'm in this place where I kind of need to rumble with my own stuff to be okay with it and kind of come out to a balanced place. Ultimately, what I would like to do is that when I'm feeling like I want to connect, that I connect, and I'm not playing, well, you haven't poloed me, so I'm not going to polo you. But this whole thing around having needs and this too muchness, it runs very, very deep. And, we are talking about it, but it's just, I know that I am not the only person that struggles with this. When I was talking with a friend on the phone this morning about some of these attachment injuries that are coming up, I was saying I'm really struggling because I'm having a very hard time right now initiating doing things on my own. And a couple months ago with this friend, I was talking about, I wanted to get stuff cleaned out and it was just feeling really hard. And I just had a lot of shame around it. And we talked about it. And then that somehow allowed me to just start doing some cleanup around the house. But this really wounded part of me just wants someone to be here to sit with me, to enter my world and to be present for me and to hold space for me and to keep me company. And as a kid, there were times when I felt so incredibly lonely and by myself, and I just wanted a project. I wanted something. I was an avid reader, and I think that saved me. And as you know, during COVID, my focus is just, my ability to sustain attention is pretty minimal. And I don't have that ability to just kind of escape and get lost in a book, because that feels really comforting when I have something that's just totally engaging for me, where I don't depend on other people to entertain me or keep me company. It's a very big theme. And when I was talking with this friend this morning and talking about this part of me that, just feels so lonely and I just want somebody, I talked about in an earlier episode about getting this craft to make a Halloween craft, and everything is sitting out on the table. It's been there for a few weeks and I just can't seem to initiate sitting down and doing it. And I have a bunch of things around the house, and when I can get busy and do things, it's so satisfying to me. And I get in this place where it's like a dorsal response. If you're familiar with polyvagal theory, it's kind of a freeze response, and I just freeze, and I'm on TikTok. And so as I started to cry about this part, and, she said, can you just show up for this part? And I got really mad. Like, I don't want to parent her. I want somebody else to parent her. I don't want to be the parent. And there are so many ways where I've really learned to show up for myself and to be present. And this is a really big unhealed part that I keep very compartmentalized and off to the side. And I just don't want to show up for her. And obviously I'm talking about it, so I am, going to start working on it. But my guess is that we all have this. And this part, I feel like if people saw her, they would run away from me. They would say, you are so needy. It's too much, and I can't handle you, and I can't handle your needs. And I've dealt with this, done some healing around this on a number of levels, but I think this is really kind of what's at the bottom of this core wound. And then the final example that I'm going to give you, and I feel some shame around this, and I understand why it's there. I have another friend. We used to be very close, and we've just gone through some adjustments again. This is not about the friend. This is about my stuff. And now we talk infrequently. And when we're not talking, I end up, it's an attachment defense where I go into, I don't need this friend, and she's not that close of a friend. And, all the ways that I keep safety to myself. That's not the right word. It's the defense mechanisms that I have to defend against the need for connection. And then I heard from this friend, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I miss her and I just love being with her and I just want this connection and I miss this way that we process together. And then when there's space again, it's like not being able to have object constancy, which is when you have a baby and you play peekaboo, the ball is gone and the baby thinks that it's gone. For those of us that have attachment injuries, I don't know if this is related to executive functioning. I don't know. I'm just guessing. So don't quote me on this. But I think that when we have attachment injuries and people are out of our consciousness, I go into this place of, oh, they're not important to me. And I think of all the things in the relationships that don't work to defend myself against missing them. And then I connect and then I'm like, oh, it just feels so good. It makes me feel a little bit unstable. And I recognize that it's just coming from a place of wounding. And this is how we've learned to protect ourselves. And I'm talking about it because obviously I want to work on it and I want to heal. And my guess is that there will be some of you who are listening that are going like, oh my gosh, that's what I do. And it can feel very, it can feel unstable to kind of denigrate a person or a relationship to protect ourselves. And then we connect and then it feels good. And so it's like, am I coming? Am I going? We've learned to do these things to create safety and to protect ourselves. It is not the truth of what's going on today. And in the way that I shared when I did that tapping to remind myself that the narrative I want to go into is nobody's here for me. I don't have any friends. People don't care about me, blah, blah, blah. People love me and care about me. And I have people that are so solid and here for me. Doesn't mean that they're going to be here every time I need them. Doesn't mean that they're going to be here at my beck and call. I'm not an infant that is dependent on a mother to change me and to change my diaper and to feed me and to give me comfort. We are all grown adults and we cannot be abandoned today. I read something, I wish I remember where it was, but the gist of it is we are our home and nobody can abandon us because we are our home. And I think that when we are young and people don't show up for us and we have abuse, neglect, all of those things, and we have this real abandonment when we are younger, that we live in that past place of thinking that people can abandon us and we're going to get hurt in the same way that we were when we were younger. Is it going to hurt? Of course. Is it going to activate feelings? Of course it is. The reality is today, I can take care of myself and I can manage if people come into my life or they leave my life. Will it hurt? Will I have feelings? Will it be difficult? Yes. But generally, the worst things have already happened to us, and then we are afraid that they will happen again, and we live in this place of fear or anticipatory fear. We can't control what goes on in relationships, and connection means that we are going to have loss and hurt and disappointment. It also means that we can have this amazing connection and vulnerability. And even this morning with this friend that I was talking about, she said, like, I wish I could do something for you. And I was thinking about a meme that I saw recently that Brene Brown wrote about, we're longing for this sense of connection and community. And really it comes from when we can get together with people and we speak honestly and vulnerably. That authenticity, that's what we're craving. That's what we're longing for. And I think so many times people don't know what goes on with us internally. They make up stories. And it's not like we walk around and share with people our fears, our insecurities, our hurts. That's one of the reasons why I feel so passionate about talking about the vulnerable things that I do on this podcast, because if you saw my life from the outside, it looks one way, but I'm willing to share with you some of the things that I struggle with because they're very average and normal. And from the handful of therapists that I'm close with, we all have stuff that we struggle with. We don't always talk about it, but that doesn't mean that we don't struggle. So we look at people and think that everybody has their stuff together, and it's just not true. And there are ways that we can learn to do our healing work, to feel with what's going on. That doesn't make sense, feel with what's going on. To feel our feelings and to manage it and do fine. It doesn't mean that we will not feel these things and that we live these perfect lives, but it's about learning how to manage the things that are challenging and difficult, to reparent ourselves, to get the support that we need. And it's about connection. We need to have connection with other people. We need that. That's healthy. So my question to you is, there's squirrels outside my window that are playing. It's just adorable and it's very distracting. Where are you at in your relationships? Whether they're at work, if they're with your parents, your children, your siblings, your friends, your neighbors, where are you at? And how secure do you feel in your relationships? Do you have relationships where you can talk honestly about your feelings? I remember years ago being in therapy and saying something to my therapist, and my therapist said, "Did you tell the person?" I'm like, I could tell them that. Many of us that grew up in homes did not talk about feelings, and we didn't know that it's okay to say that really hurt my feelings, or I was expecting this, and this is what I'm wanting and needing. Many people don't even know that, or they're so afraid of upsetting the other person or having to keep the peace or being afraid of conflict, having a hard time setting boundaries, feeling like we don't deserve it. Like with the friend that I started talking about in this relationship where she really showed up for this other person because of what has happened in her family and continues to happen in her family. She shows up so beautifully for other people. Oh, I have never met somebody who is as generous and giving as she is. And because of the system that she's kind of in, that she's living with some, not living, but involved with some people that are incredibly wounded. And when she can't meet their needs, which are not needs that she needs to meet, she goes into, they tell her that, she's a bad family member and that, they just denigrate her. And then she feels bad. And it's that thing of no matter what she does, it's never going to be enough. It's never going to be enough. It's never going to be okay. I mean, how many of you resonate with that? I have that. And I'm sure I have a friend that, we've got some attachment stuff. I'm sure that there are times when she feels like no matter what she does for me, it's never going to be enough and it's never going to be okay, which is probably about my attachment wounds showing up. And when we try and get other people to, like if you only called me, if you only told me this, if you only did that, people can jump through hoops. But if it's about our own attachment injuries, we have got to do that healing. That doesn't mean that, if we're in relationship with people and they disappear, that they don't let us know, hey, I'm going to be unavailable for this amount of time. So I'm not making a statement that it's extreme where we have to do all the healing on our own. Part of it we do with other people, part of it we do on our own. But I think we get into this trap of externalizing and trying to get other people to do things for us to make us feel more secure. And in some instances, that's appropriate. And we've got to be willing to do our own work. So where are you resonating with some of these things? What are the things that you're struggling with? I really feel that we want to have those deep, honest, vulnerable connections with people, especially if you're a deep thinker and a deep feeler. That sense of meaning and connection and depth can be so incredibly satisfying. So if you're not having that, can you identify what gets in the way, what comes up? The EFT tapping I find to be really helpful, but I think that you really have to do more internal work with those wounded parts if you do have those attachment wounds. There is an episode that I did with Jessica Fern. I don't know what episode it was. You'll have to look back. And we talk a little bit about attachment wounds in the episode on complex PTSD with Kina Wolfenstein. So there is healing that we're going to need to do if we want to have more secure attachments, more fulfilling relationships, and have relationships where we can talk about what goes on. If you're struggling with any of these things, if you're having grief, anxiety, depression, you're not sure how your traits are showing up, you're not sure if it's wounding, if it's being a highly sensitive person or being a creative or a deep thinker, I do have a couple spots open right now. I don't know how long they'll be open for, but I would love to work with you if you're interested. You can learn all about my fees and rates and what I do at unapologeticallysensitive.com. I really believe that we are meant to heal the world. We have so many gifts to offer the world, and we've gotten so many messages about what is wrong with us, and we internalize that. We are the healers, the justice makers, the creatives, the peacekeepers. We have so much to do, especially at this time in the world, and doing our own healing is going to help us really show up in the world the way that we were meant to. And we are the only people that can do that healing for ourselves and spread our gifts and share them in the world. I really do believe that we each have such incredible and beautiful gifts to offer the world. My fears and gremlins come up and I feel like, what do I have to offer? And I just sit in my muck. And then people around me reflect how much I've impacted them. And then I go, oh yeah. Our gift is ourselves, the uniqueness of who we are, the sweetness of who we are. Sometimes the things that we've been told are wrong with us really are our gifts. And it just means doing our healing and finding our people so that they really appreciate and can mirror back how valuable and precious we are. I hope this has been helpful. I hope you are doing well. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.